On day 2, a prisoner started screaming to be let out, not performing, not testing the limits, actually screaming, throwing himself at the bars, telling the guards he was having a full mental breakdown. The guards' response? They made him do push-ups. This was 1971. The basement of the Stanford Psychology Building. Philip Zimbardo was a 38-year-old professor who would become one of the most cited psychologists in history, had converted a corridor into a makeshift prison. 9 prisoners. 9 guards, all college students, all mentally healthy, all randomly assigned their roles by a coin flip. The experiment was supposed to run for 2 weeks. It lasted 6 days. There's one detail about what happened in that basement that didn't fully come out until decades later. We'll get there. But first, you need to understand what the guards were actually told. Nothing. The guards received no instructions on how to behave. Zimbardo told them only that they needed to maintain law and order and prevent escapes. That was it. No script, no model to follow. Just a uniform, a pair of mirrored sunglasses, and a wooden baton they were told to carry but never use. They invented everything else themselves. Within 24 hours they had their own system. Prisoners were referred to only by number, never by name. They were made to wear smocks with no underwear. Humiliating by design, something the guards had decided on without being asked. They were given a bucket for a toilet. By day 2, the guards were running 2 a.m. head counts, not because the experiment required it, because they wanted to. And here's what should unsettle you. These weren't sadists. Pre-experiment psychological testing found nothing unusual about any of them. The guards who became the cruelest, who invented the most degrading punishments, had no history of aggression. They were ordinary students who'd been handed a costume in a corridor. And something shifted. Zimbardo had a name for what happened to them. He called it de-individuation, the process by which a person loses their individual identity and starts to experience themselves purely through the role they've been given. Once the uniform went on, they stopped being Tom or Dave or Michael. They became the guard. And the guard had a job to do. Stay with me, because what happened to the prisoners is darker. Now picture yourself as one of them. You were arrested at your home. Real police, real handcuffs, real neighbors watching from the sidewalk. That part wasn't in the briefing. You were blindfolded, taken to a station, processed, stripped, deloused, given a smock and a number. Your name is gone. You're the 819. You're 1037. By day 3, prisoners had started behaving like actual prisoners. Not because anyone told them to, because the situation had restructured their entire sense of who they were. Prisoner 8612, Douglas Corby, a pre-med student, broke first. Uncontrolled crying, disorganized thinking, rage. When he demanded to be released for genuine psychological distress, a guard told him he couldn't leave, that he'd have to earn it, that he wasn't sick. He was weak. He was eventually let go. 5 others would follow before it was over. One prisoner went on a hunger strike. The guard's response was to put his food inside the solitary confinement cell, a small dark closet, and tell the other prisoners that if he didn't eat, everyone would lose their mattresses. Most of the prisoners turned on him, started calling him a troublemaker. They'd stopped seeing him as a fellow student. He had become the problem. Meanwhile, Zimbardo had his own problem, and he didn't know it yet. He had given himself the title of prison superintendent. He held daily staff meetings. He worried about security risks. He was so absorbed in the role that when a colleague stopped by to check in and asked how the experiment was going, he answered as a superintendent, not a scientist. The man running the study had lost his own perspective. That detail didn't become fully public until Zimbardo's memoir, published in 2007, 36 years after the experiment ended. There was one person who walked into one of that corridor and saw exactly what was happening, not one of the 50-plus observers and staff who'd come and gone over 5 days. One person. We'll get there in a moment. But first, what the experiment actually revealed is more uncomfortable than the experiment itself. Zimbardo spent the years after 1971 developing what he called the Lucifer Effect, his framework for how ordinary people commit extraordinary cruelty, not through malice, through situation. The guards at Stanford weren't cruel people. They were people inside a situation that made cruelty the path of the least resistance. A costume, a title, an implied permission, and a group of peers, all doing the same thing. Now think about where you've seen that structure before. Not in history books. In your own life. The workplace where everyone knew something was wrong and nobody said it. The group where the cruelest comment got the biggest laugh. The moment you went along with something because the role you were playing that day made it feel normal. That's not a thought experiment. That's Tuesday. The person who finally stopped the Stanford prison experiment was Christina Maslach, a psychology graduate student and Zimbardo's girlfriend at the time. She came to observe on day 5. She walked into that corridor and was immediately horrified. Not intrigued, not curious, horrified. She told Zimbardo that what he was doing was wrong, that these were real people, that it needed to stop. She was the only person, out of more than 50 visitors, observers, and colleagues who had passed through, who said it out loud. He shut it down the next day. One person saying, "This is wrong," ended it. The people in that basement weren't exceptional. Not the guards who became sadists, not the prisoners who broke down, not the observers who watched and said nothing. They were ordinary people inside a situation that had been carefully designed to produce exactly what it produced. The question isn't whether you would have acted differently, it's whether you would have noticed. Subscribe. Every video we make ends up somewhere you didn't expect to go. That's the point.